Hi, I'm Susie Larson. Thank you for listening to Susie Larson Live. Faith Radio podcasts are only possible because of your support. So thanks for giving, and thanks for sharing with a friend.
It's only just a matter of sing, so the back row is your glide. 'Cause walking just won't do dance. You don't have to know how to. Ever since Grace got you there.
Welcome to Susie Larson Live. Always so honored to get to spend this time with you. In fact, I look forward to bringing you conversations every single day that hopefully inspire you in your faith walk, that deepen your understanding of God's Word, and that heightens your awareness of His very real presence in your life. Well, if you listen often enough, you know every month we have our good friend Dr. Troy Spurrill on the show to talk about health and the healing process. And I just want to say our listeners are overachievers because we've already got about 10 questions in on the text line. Thank you for doing that. In years past, it seemed friends were just so engaged in listening that the questions wouldn't come till the bottom of the hour, and then they would pile up, and we could always only get to a few of them. So we always have a couple kickstarters for a conversation. Today, the two things we're going to talk about before we start taking listener questions are these: cancer and migraines, not together, not connected to each other in any way, but what are the conditions present in the body for cancer to grow? Like, why do some get cancer and some don't? Same question about migraines. What are the conditions in the body that allow for migraines? Is it all genetic? Is it choices? Is it toxicity? What is it? We'll get into that in just a moment. However, I want you to have the number so you can text in your question. And the thing is, my amazing producers grab these questions. If we don't get to them, they put them in a document, and then we always record an extra show with Troy and just cover as many of them as we're able. So no question is ridiculous. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can. You got a question? Here it is. The number, text it in 877-933-2484. Quick announcement. If you're new to the faith, if you have questions about your faith, or maybe you're looking for a simple way to share your faith, well, we are super excited to send you a copy of the Gospel of John, along with a few extra little pieces of information to help you understand the road to salvation. Maybe you want to share your faith with someone. This little gospel and the little pieces of information with it will help you do that. But maybe you're brand new to the faith and you want to learn. You also are a candidate. You can request a free copy today on our website at myfaithradio.com. All right, let me tell you about my guest. We'll get him on the show. Dr. Troy is founder and CEO of Synapse Center for Health and Healing, located in Eagan, Minnesota. He started Synapse over 26 years ago with a vision to bring an integrative approach to healthcare through functional medicine, making Synapse an internationally known center for true health. People come from all over to see him and his team. I want to say this because I have to say it every time he's on, a caveat. He's not here to give medical advice over the air. It's not fair to him, and it's not fair to you. We're talking, we gather together every month because we believe every step towards health and healing matters, and there's so much you can do preventatively for your health. There's so much you can do in changing your diet, how you manage your stress. And we want to just kind of broaden your vision of health care so you maybe get a bigger perspective on how to care for your health. But always talk to your doctor before making any big decisions. That's just super important. Dr. Troy, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me again.
Looking for again. You are our longest standing guest, I think.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's
not
awesome.
Even true in my family, so that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad to have you, as we are every month. Before we get into our kind of Kickstarter topics, what's God been talking about these days?
So I've been reading a lot in a couple different books, and so I've been in Revelations a lot, but I've also been in Isaiah, and so I'm going to pull from some of my studies in Isaiah, and this one is 41:9 into 41:10. So it starts with, I have chosen you and have not rejected you, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. And so with that, the study was more of at that times, and there's just a lot of similar things that we're going through right now. And so that just stood out to me when I was reading it, thinking, man, how relevant is that right now, just with my personal daily walk and just a lot of the people that I've been speaking with and working with. And a lot of people just have concerns about whether it's their health or other things going on. And it's just such a good message, and I just repeat that over and over and over. I have chosen you. I have not rejected you. I am with you, for I am your God. Just those over and over, just repeating it. It's just so powerfully comfortable. It's like one of those weighted blankets around you that just feels so good.
That's so good. What a good way to put that as well. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's start, if we can, with the topic of cancer, and then we'll move on to migraines. You've said on past shows that most everyone at some point in their lives has cancer in their body, but it doesn't always materialize for many. In fact, your body might just destroy it. You, Kevin and I think it was our first appointment with you. You showed us an incredible video. I think you might have it on your website. First, talk about that video, then unpack the idea about cancer.
Yeah, so I do have a video I put together many years ago. It's on YouTube called Your Immune System Under the Microscope, or you can go to our website. It's on the front page down at the bottom. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, just go to Official Synapse, synapse.com, and then you can see it there. And it's also in our media section. It's my favorite video because it shows you how God made you as far as our cells and our immune system. So it's a 4-minute video, and it just shows under the microscope how your immune system kind of cleans up your cells and how your immune system protects you. And then it specifically shows how your immune system goes after cancer and cancerous cells, how it can. And so it's a very, very good visual, and it shows the immune cells just kind of swimming around there. And when I say swim, I mean swim, meaning you have to have water. So people are dehydrated. The immune cells have to crawl, just like someone who's crawling in the desert, and they can't get where they need to go. So you need that water flowing through you. And so it really paints that picture. So it's a good visual. So I encourage everyone to go and take a look at that video, because the picture's worth 1,000 words. This video is worth 10,000 words. So it does way more justice than even what I can talk about when it comes to cancer.
Let's explain this. So you have these little cells, and they're swimming around, and then cancer is trying to, if I remember right, kind of poke in and get inside the cell. Is that right? Or is it already in the cell?
No, that's backwards.
Opposite?
Yeah, so opposite. So what happens is, cancer starts because there's been a breakdown in communication with your normal processes. So there's been a switch that's turned on, and your cell starts growing faster and faster and faster. So basically, the different things within the environment around the DNA can trigger that cancerous cell, can trigger that cell to become cancerous. And so your immune system, though, once it has started to grow, will start to poke to try and get inside the cancer cell and can actually destroy it from the inside. If you have enough of those immune cells, those cytotoxic cells. And so a lot of it has to do with, number one, we can protect our cells by restoring the God-given integrity of the cells. Anything that's foreign to us has the potential of causing disruption. So whether it be a virus that's not that's left unchecked, or a chemical toxin, when we can't protect ourselves because we have a dampened immune system response, that's why we get cancer. And so there are many, many different causes and different reasons for that. But the end result is almost always the same, where we have the DNA within a cell. And we have what's called reactive oxidative species, and we end up with this cell turning into basically an oncogenic cell, or a cancer cell that basically starts to divide uncontrolled. And your immune system is what regulates that. Your immune system is what delegates whether or not that happens. So it's all about keeping your immune system healthy.
Okay, so I want to just paint a picture, if I can. Now that you said that, I do remember that. So you picture this kind of amoeba-looking cell, which is cancer, and the healthy your immune parts of your immune system are poking, trying to break in to get inside. And in the video, they finally succeed. They get inside, and all of a sudden, poof,
yes,
they blow that thing to smithereens.
Yep.
It's kind of like, a sci-fi movie. That is the most amazing thing. So the fact that, what percentage of people would you say go through life, have cancer in their body at some point? That transaction happens. They never know they have cancer, and they go on about their way.
I'd say 99%.
Wow.
Yeah, because really it's just maybe some youth when they're very, very young, if they're taken from us because of accident or trauma, that's the 1%. But pretty much if you get past the age of 20, I'm going to say in this day and age, you've got it at some point. Your immune system is taking care of it. And that is a
is
very much a
amazing.
rough estimate, but we see these markers and we see these things all the time.
Wow. So I know that genes are involved, but they're also stressors and toxins and inflammation and sugar and alcohol use. There's all kinds of factors when it comes to why a body gets cancer. So maybe, that's my layman's, perspective, but I love what is happening in the atmosphere in a body that where the cancer is allowed to grow.
Well, I'm going to start with this. So first thing is, even if you have a genetic tendency for cancers in your family, it does not mean that you're going to get cancer. So genes are just going to, they're like a map, really. They're just going to be turned on or off depending on the environment. And yes, if you have bad genes as it relates to cancer, you're more likely. But if you do certain things, take certain precautions, you're not going to get it. For example, my mentor, who had a horrible genetic family tree of heart disease, every male in his family died before the age of 50. He's in his late 60s right now with no problems because he identified all the different things that could trigger those genes and just avoided them. Things like cigarette smoke. And it's the same for cancers. There's regardless of genetics, you can manage the environment and keep it as clean as possible. So things like hormones and hormone disruptors in the environment, a lot of chemical toxins can do it. We see viruses and infections like parasites that get inside the cell. If they change the environment inside the cell, then that can trigger some cancers as well. And that doesn't happen usually until there's quite an immune compromise. And so certain things like deficiencies of zinc and other things like we know DDT was a very strong chemical that the body just didn't know what to do with. And so that triggered cancers very quickly. So certain things like really strong chemicals can cause cancers. But pretty much anything that causes a big what's called a redox reaction or the depletes your antioxidants can end up causing cancer because there's a lot of our antioxidants that help your immune system get the toxins out of the body.
And that was going to be the flip side of my question then. Foods that prevent cancer could be something like berries, broccoli, walnuts, veggies, nuts, tomatoes. Am I right? Or there
Yeah,
more?
absolutely. So we know with longevity studies that the people who have the lowest calorie diets with the highest nutrients, which is usually fruits and vegetables, have a lot of antioxidants, they tend to live the longest. However, we also see people that are on just a straight up carnivore type diet where they've lived off of fat and blubber and protein, and they've done fine as well. So it's not just that. The problem in today's age is most of the Inuit or Eskimo up in northern Canada there also have access to sugar. So the second you add sugar into it, you've just
It's explosive.
yeah, it's very explosive. Yep.
Yeah. And I remember last month you talked about olive oil and the good kinds of olive oil. I know of a gal right now fighting cancer, and it was highly recommended that she find a good olive oil and add that to her daily regimen. Just say a quick word about that if you would.
Yeah, there's clean olive oils that have polyphenols in them, and if you can get an olive oil with high polyphenol counts, it's a game changer. And so some people, get into fine wines and things like that. My wife and I ordered olive oils from Greece. We were just in Florida on a trip, and we found a specialty shop, and sure enough, they had imported olive oils, and you would have thought we were like a kid in a candy store. So that we were like,
We'll take all of it.
We'll take all. Well, that's pretty much what I did, whatever I could get back. And so I literally will go home tonight, and I've got this olive oil from Greece that I will put a little shot of it on a well, I don't do like a shot glass. It's can I say that on Christian radio? It's actually a tablespoon that I put it on, but it's a shot of that olive oil from Greece, and it's peppery and it's deep and it's flavorful, and the polyphenol count is outrageous. It's so good and has so much in it.
And you put it on your food?
No, I straight up. It's just like
Wow.
that's my precursor to my food.
Wow. We just got a moment before we take a break, and this is a tiny bit off topic, but I don't think really, My sense, I might be wrong about this, is the healthcare of the future is going to be so much based on labs because there's just not a one-size-fits-all answer. There just is not. I am not a doctor, but the big joke is I play when I'm radio, but I know I'm right about this. There's not a one-size-fits-all answer to even symptoms. And I think once you take labs and you see you're high in this, you're low in this, you're in the red zone here, you can make adjustments, preventative adjustments, rather than waiting for active disease. Just my opinion, Doc, but I'd love to know your thoughts.
Well, absolutely. So I just had a really high-end conversation with someone who works with one of the local hospital systems here, and that particular hospital is about $300 million in debt, and they're trying to figure out what can they do. Well, they landed on the fact that basically the problem is that people are coming into the hospital. Insurance will cover a 2 or 3 day stay, but they're so sick that they don't actually get out until 5 to 7 days. But the hospital's not getting paid for that last half of it. Insurance is not covering that. So the hospital eats that cost. So they're losing a lot of money. They just had one, I don't know if she wants me saying this, but they just had one of my nurses got let go from that hospital system. They work at our clinic as well, and many of them did. There was over 22 that day that got let go, but they also have a shortage, but it's because of the budget side of it. And so these hospitals, what this particular system landed on is we need people to be healthier before they come into the hospital. So they want to do a proactive approach. But as I was listening to what they were doing, I'm like, with all due respect, what went through my head is they have no idea what they're doing. This is my world. This is what I've been doing for 30 years as far as functional medicine and the proactive approach. And I listened to what they were planning and everything, and the idea is bang on. It's exactly right. But they've never been taught, and I could tell. So based on what they were saying. So I do think there's going to be a huge collaboration with functional medicine and with the traditional side because they need us now. They need people healthier to come into the hospital so they can recover faster.
And boy, that's our prayer, friends, that these two worlds will come together, honor and respect one another. As we go to break, when we come back, we'll talk migraines and then we'll start tackling all these questions. I appreciate them so much. But going to break, I just, to be thinking about, as Dr. Troy said, you might have a genetic predisposition to cancer, but it's, there are choices you can make on how to, if those genes will turn on or not. I mean, it's not like you're in full control. God's in control. But what you eat, how you manage stress, if you get the rest you need, all things that we talk about every single month, every step towards healing matters. Your diet matters. I'm motivated to I actually did find a good olive oil. I've been putting it on my salad every day. Every choice, every step towards healing matters. More with Dr. Troy in a minute. Hi, I'm Susie Larson, host of Susie Larson Live. When someone asks me, how do you live differently because of Calvary? I say 3 words. It is finished. My sin and my shame were nailed to the cross, and now I can live with a holy expectancy. Yes, we have trials and troubles as we live on this fallen planet, but we have so much to look forward to. You can live change today because of what Jesus has promised you in your tomorrows. Connecting faith to life. Faith Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in to Susie Larson Live, talking to our good friend, Dr. Troy Spurrill. He's CEO and founder of Synapse Center for Health and Healing, located in Eagan, Minnesota. And every month we have him on to talk about health and the healing process. And we always kick off our conversation with a couple of key topics. Today is cancer. Why do some get it? Why do some not? Is there anything we can do to prevent cancer? We've already talked about that. We're going to move into migraines, and then I promise you, friends, we're going to start digging into all these questions that have come in. So appreciate them. Anything you want to tell us about migraines? One thing that I've read that women are far more apt to get migraines than men. And I have a friend who had repetitive migraines, and in her situation, I know, again, every situation is different, but when she cut out white flour, white sugar, white rice, gluten, and normal sugar, just cut those things way back. They reduced her migraines significantly. Anytime she cheats, she gets them again. But I'd love for you to speak to whatever you would like to about migraines.
Yeah, that's very common. Those are the inflammatory migraines, and there's also vascular migraines that come from stress. And so that can be when we have stress and our blood vessels spasm too hard or become too soft, even that can cause migraines because of lack of oxygen. Then we also see magnesium is such an important mineral and is needed for headache control and migraine control, especially with women too. And when you think of stress, and I ask this question every time I do a mindset class at the clinic, which I just did one last night, I always ask everyone in the class, what's the number one thing that women crave when they are stressed? When it comes to sugar, what's the number one sugar choice? And every time, in all the years I've been doing it, not have they ever gotten this wrong, and it's chocolate. And so chocolate's very high in magnesium. Dark chocolate's very, very high with it. So a lot of women are magnesium deficient. It's the second most common mineral deficiency worldwide.
Wow.
And so that's a big part of it. Stress will deplete magnesium. Hormone imbalances are another trigger for both the vascular and the regular. The inflammatory. So hormones can be definitely part of it, and we have a lot of endocrine disruptors with chemicals, pesticides. So just cleaning up your diet and not consuming seed oils and not and eating organic can actually help a lot with migraines. A weird cause of migraines is spasm of the intestinal tract. So when you have an intestinal spasm, and it can be from healthy food. I just had this on Monday, where the person ate very, very healthy, but the raw fruits and vegetables, the fiber was rubbing up against the small intestine, which that's its job. Just like a massage therapist will rub the muscles to relax it, that's what was happening. The fiber rubs up against the wall of the intestines. But if that massage therapist is rubbing up against the muscles and you have a sunburn, then all of a sudden you kind of like shrink and you try and push it away, you react. Well, that's the same thing. If your intestines are spasmed because of inflamed intestines and the fiber rubs up against it, then it can trigger, one of the things it can trigger is a migraine. So a lot of people will have like one or two bad things in their diet that cause an inflammatory reaction, and then they eat healthy the rest of the time, and that's enough to trigger that spasm and cause the migraine. And so we see that with people who have reactions to nightshades and they otherwise have a very healthy diet, and they don't realize it's the lectins or the nightshades that are actually causing the problems.
Wow, very interesting. Thank you so much for that. And Mike duly noted, he says, "That's a lie. I'm a dude." So we love you, Mike. And I'm so sorry if that means you struggle with migraines, because definitely guys deal with them as well.
Yes.
I just heard a percentage that I think women were far more likely. I don't know if is that true?
Yeah. I clinically, I see about 80% women and 20% men for migraines. The men are almost always a liver referral and a neck referral triggering the migraine. So it's usually physical in the neck and or sleep disorder with the guys, and then liver. Anytime the liver, I'll say it this way, your body temperature when it comes to what organ has the most control over it, for men, it's the liver. For women, it's the uterus. So any problems with those two organs can trigger a headache scenario.
Wow. And tell me if I'm wrong about this. If you've got the liver scenario, milk thistle in the morning with warm water, warm lemon water, drinking it, and having your milk thistle right away in the morning before you have anything else would be a great liver cleanse, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yep. It helps support the liver quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the liver cleanses through the bowels and the kidneys through the urine, correct?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So here's a couple anonymous questions. How does one know if they have a PSP or a persistent spike protein from the COVID vax? How does one test for it? What's the protocol for curing it? I'll have you answer that, and then I'll give you the second question.
So that's an interesting question, because we actually have one of the most unique ways of identifying it. So you can look at the damage done. So that's one way we do it. We look at the damage to the endothelial lining. So we have an endopat machine. Mayo Clinic has one for research purposes, and I know the U of M has one, but we use our endopat and we can see endothelial damage. So we run that test and then start cleaning it up, so to speak. From a lab perspective, I just hired a new PA who I think had the best protocol for long haul COVID and for the vaccine injuries. And she's doing, spike protein injuries. She's doing a good job assessing that. And so she has a standard panel where she'll look at the fibrinogen, the D-dimer, and a few other factors to quantitate the potential damage. They don't have a decent test just for that. They do have, Cyrex Labs has a lymphocyte panel that can tell you the different interactions of your immune system, because what we're seeing with the spike protein is that it is down-regulating part of your immune system, so you actually become potentially more sick to other infections. It's very, very similar to what the AIDS virus did, but just not nearly as strong. AIDS standing for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, where it downregulates a certain part of the immune system that helps with the healing process. So we actually get a sign or signaling from the changes in the immune cells, and we'll measure CD4, CD8, and other detailed immune lymphatic markers. And then what you do about it depends on what you find. So if there's endothelial damage, we actually use natural products to help with what we call leaky vessel syndrome. And Orthomolecular is the nutritional company that I like to use for that. If there's arterial stiffness, which happens as a reaction, then we'll use things like nitric oxide and essential fatty acids, olive oil, to help with that part of it. And then when it comes to the actual persistent spike protein, we are seeing, this is kind of crazy, but we have to onboard hormones sometimes. So I'm actually writing a book right now, and this is a chapter I just started with the hormones and the link to the recovery from the spike proteins. And it's fascinating because you remember vitamin D, we know there's a lot of research right now showing that people with good vitamin D did much better with COVID. Well, turns out vitamin D is a hormone, and a lot of people forget that. So our other hormones, if you were low estrogen, you had an increased susceptibility to spike protein damage. And so there's a lot of other things that we're going to be publishing based on what the new research is showing. But the hormones are a big, big deal when it comes to the recovery as well. And then I'm working with a neurologist right now who is doing some work and working on reducing the reactive oxidative species using some protocols. And we're finding out that it binds the spike protein as well. So sometimes we use natural products like that. We have, there's a weak affinity with ivermectin, can actually bind some of the spike proteins, and same with hydroxychloroquine. So we've had to use that in some cases. We've had to use an oxytocin nasal spray for when it's affecting the brain to help restore the smell and taste for people who have lost that. And so I have on our website, I did a full breakdown answering this question, a whole hour episode with Rochelle, the new PA that has been treating this. She's been treating people around the country. She's probably the sharpest person I know on the subject, just based on, because she's just been purely focused on that. And the onboarding of the hormone stuff has been just eye-opening as far as just recovery for people.
You know, I'm just curious about this. We have a couple minutes before we go to break, but why, they said over and over again during the COVID pandemic that those who battled obesity would have a much harder battle on their hands. And it truly proved to be true that those who were obese got extremely sick. Now, it wasn't across the board all the time, but really it was very often. Why was that?
Well, obesity equals inflammation. So if you think about if you're already inflamed, and that's what we're seeing. So our ROS, reactive oxidative species, which is the same thing that if it's around the DNA can cause cancer, but when it's on the outside of the cells, it's kind of like burning of the cells. So that's where, remember the people who got really, really sick? They in the beginning, there was people who got cytokine storm. That is an inflammatory reaction. Well, those are the people where that's already turned up in their body. And so this is my point exactly. So here's based on everything, I'm going to kind of tie this up in a bow here. The traditional medical system never paid attention to the immune system prior to COVID. That is what we focused on in our clinic all the time. That's why our patients had no problems with COVID, because we knew who of our patient base had an inflamed immune system already, because we measured it. And we actively had put things in place to dampen that response. So we are already working to reduce their cytokines. And it took the traditional system by storm because they never measure that. They don't, that's not part of their they don't have a proactive approach. So people who had pre-existing conditions were more susceptible because they were usually already in an inflamed state.
Wow. As we go to break, I've got one more question that came in last time. Says, seeing a lot of hype regarding the health benefits of hydrogen water. Is there anything to that?
That is the most common question I'm getting right now, and I am also seeing a lot of hype. And my email box got flooded with asking for different product endorsements. I have 8 different product endorsement requests for hydrogen water. So
do you like it?
Well, okay. So here I am with it. So yes, I like it, but I think there's more to the scenario. I personally, now I'm just going to say this on the air right now. I think if certain things happen in the next couple of years and we truly change some things with our environment and our healthcare system, cancer itself could be a thing of the past within 10 or 15 years. That's how significant. We know so much about our electric grid, the electrons that get pulled from it. Hydrogen water is simply doing the same. It's combating the ROS that I was talking about, but it could be like trying to put a cup of water on a forest fire. So you also have to remove all the things that are causing the forest fire, which we know what a lot of them are right now. And so there's some things. I know privately we've spoken because you know who I'm working with when it comes to the study that's being done, and I can't speak on that study yet. But the preliminary results are fascinating. And one of the things that we do know is our electric grid, all the computers, all the other stuff that we're surrounded by, are interfering with our immune system's ability to actually combat the scenario. And things like hydrogen water, things like donators, antioxidants that donate these electrons and can help with the scenario are helpful. They're definitely helpful. But there's a lot more that we could remove that would speed up the whole process. And I think that revelation is starting to come to the surface where people that can make some good changes are going to be very, very aware of it.
Wow, very cool. We are just praying so much, again, that these two worlds can work together because there's a place for both. And as you know, Dr. Tom Blee, who's been on, he's a good friend of Dr. Troy's and ours as well. He's a trauma surgeon, and we're in we've got good friends in both worlds, and they are behind the scenes really working together. And it's a beautiful thing to see because we need to work together so that we can find the best possible outcome for each patient. Well, I want that so much. And I'm very passionate about the preventative work you can do, but also really honoring who God has put in your path to help you get better. Talking to Dr. Troy Spurrill today. When we come back, we'll dig into more questions. There's lots of them, but we'll do our best. We'll be back in a minute. Thank you so much for tuning into Susie Larson Live. We've got our good friend Dr. Troy Spurrill on the show. He is CEO and founder of Synapse Center for Health and Healing, located in Eagan, Minnesota. Now we're going to go on a fast round with these questions. We've got more questions than time. So, Doc, we're going to just have to do our best to plow through them. One that came from the same listener who asked about a previous question said, functional medicine for us is by far the best way for moving forward for our health as a family. However, it's out of reach for many of us since it's not covered by insurance. Any hopeful information regarding suggestions for people who are in the middle of the income spectrum? What say you?
I love this question because you should have hope, number one. Number two, I'm just the way things are playing out, and you know a lot about my personal life, Susie, and how a lot of what I'm doing right now was put on my heart 20 years ago, and it's all starting to come to fruition. So I'm going to say it this way. We need to first start with a mindset shift when it comes to insurance and being proactive with your health. So I want to say it this way. When does your car insurance pay? When you're in an accident and have had trauma. When does your house insurance pay? When there's been an accident or a trauma to the building. When does your health insurance pay? When there's trauma. It's not ever going to pay for preventative, proactive approach because that would be like your house insurance saying, I will pay you to paint the walls. I will pay you to cut your grass. It'll never happen. So you have to budget for your health proactively like you would your house. Start with that. Now, having said that, I do believe that if and when we fix things economically with the country and we prioritize things, we can become less sick, number one, and we can subsidize a healthy living lifestyle. But I've also found that people have to have a piece of the load, if you will. You have to take responsibility, because changing your diet when sugars are readily available and it's cheaper, you have to have an expense to it. So it has to hurt a little bit for you to be all in to make the changes too. So I wouldn't even be on board with insurance covering functional medicine 100%, not out of the gates, because when people use other people's money, it just doesn't work. And so that's part of the problem. We have to shift mentally and start budgeting for it, number one. Then we do need to subsidize the healthier stuff so it is cheaper for people. And we have to take care of some the socioeconomic issues, because that really defines a lot of the health stuff. Schools should have the healthiest food, and they have the most unhealthy food. So there's got to be a reprioritization of where our money goes. And so that I do believe is possible and is potentially going to happen in the upcoming years. But I want people to first realize that there has to be a mental shift. Now, we found this out because we started a nonprofit to help pay for people and their programs. And the majority of people, if we just paid for everything, we get a certain percentage that just don't follow through. But when people have to save up for it, and they have to invest in themselves and invest in it, then there's more follow through. I hope that makes sense.
It does. When I was in college, I was surrounded by friends whose parents paid for their college, and my parents didn't have that money. So every time if I considered skipping a class or whatever, it was dollar signs in my head. And I was thinking, I have to work another full summer to pay for that one class. And so I had so much skin in the game that it was just so different for me. And that is just the reality of human nature. It is, if you've got some skin in the game, it sure does make a difference. So I so appreciate that. And friends, keep praying and keep believing, but also ask God to help you, because he wants to help you be well. He cares about health and the healing process. All right, here's one. I have so many, and they're coming from every which way, so I'll just dig in as best I can here. Oh, this one I promised to ask. How do you get rid of ear ringing?
Oh, yeah, easy one, right? Okay, so ear ringing.
I'm listening because I'm there, baby.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that can cause that. So people who are on statins, that's a side effect of statins. People who are on aspirin or take aspirin, it's a side effect of aspirin. If your blood is too thick or too thin, that can cause it. So anemia can cause ear ringing. Dehydration can cause ear ringing. Deficiency in CoQ10 and fish oils can cause ear ringing. Too much iron or too little iron in the blood can cause ear ringing. And then jaw displacement from grinding your teeth or any type of dental issue can cause ear ringing. Inflammation in the lymphatic system can cause ear ringing. And then neck and physical tension and stress in the head and neck can cause ear ringing. So off the top of my head, that's the ear ringing conversation.
Wow, very good. Maybe we'll spend more time on that someday. All right. If you're on a regimen of antibiotics every 4 or 5 months for 10 days at a time, is there anything to nourish what's being depleted from them? Probiotics, I would imagine. Prebiotics?
Yeah, definitely prebiotics and probiotics. But if you're on it every month, there's something else that's being missed or something else that has to be addressed. There isn't a need for that unless your immune system is compromised in some way, shape, or form. So you'd want to look at why that is. Now, if it's because the immune system's been so compromised and you have to do it to kind of combat that, and there is no solution, then you have to just keep up with the prebiotics, probiotics as much as possible. Deep sleep to restore the digestive system, so the probiotics can actually take hold in the gut, because it's kind of like dropping seed in a garden versus dropping seed on the driveway, or like the parable that Jesus had as far as where you're dropping your seed and the crows get it, or if it's fertile soil. You have to be sleeping deeply, and your digestive system has to be moving for probiotics to take hold. Otherwise, they just go right by the intestine. So you still have to have the foundational fertile soil, so to speak, in the intestines, which you get from having a low inflammatory diet, sleeping deeply, being in rest and digest, and not being in fight or flight.
Wow, very good. All right, this question from a listener says, in his 40s, has high blood pressure for years and managed well on losartan, L-O-S-A-R. Yep. 20-year-old
Losartan.
son has been having high blood pressure readings for months. He's a college athlete, extremely fit. None of the typical risk factors or modifiers for high blood pressure. Before having him start a blood pressure medication, anything else he could try?
Oh, yeah. We usually, I'm going to say upper 90% of the people that we work with don't end up staying on blood pressure medication. It's rare. So there's a handful right now that we have to keep them on it, because there's always a reason for the blood pressure. And if there is like a genetic component there, then it usually has to do with like a carnitine deficiency or a fatty acid oxidation thing. So the vessels, you have to figure out, are the vessels stiff? If that's the case, that's what I was talking about before, where there's a nitric oxide problem or an omega-3 problem. If there's endothelial damage, that's an antioxidant or a free radical problem. If it's a nerve or stress problem, because there are some genetics that trigger like a COMT anxiety type of scenario, and that can cause the nervous system to trigger the blood pressure. I am not a fan of putting 20-something-year-olds on blood pressure medication, because there's always a reason for that. And I just did an interview with a medical doctor, Dr. Ray Strand, 50 years as a medical doctor, and he reported that he doesn't even look at cholesterol anymore when it comes to blood pressure, because it's irrelevant. So that the whole theory of cholesterol and the plaquing, that's like shooting the messenger. So there's a whole other scenario that sets up the whole blood pressure and cholesterol damaging to the arterial system scenario.
Would you suggest he get to a functional med clinic?
Absolutely. And you can listen to that we just released that on our website again with that interview. He goes into a deep dive as far as just statins and cholesterol and how things changed. It's fascinating to listen to him, because he's 50 years in the medical
practice. He's been
practice.
In the world.
Yeah,
he's a traditional med doc.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, traditional, but he also he flies patients up to our clinic and brings them up from the state that he's from for the functional medicine. So he fell in love with functional medicine. He's often said, I wish that I knew this when I was starting practice 50 years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah, very
Wow,
humble doctor.
Well, friend, I pray you can get your son into a good functional med clinic and get a workup done and find some answers. Lord, I just pray a blessing on that young man. Keep him safe, keep him strong, keep him healthy. And I pray you'd highlight the issue sooner than later so they could tackle it and take care of it. In Jesus' name. We're going to tackle more questions here on the other side of the break. Dr. Troy Spurrill is my guest, and we'll be back in a minute. Hi, I'm Susie Larson, host of Susie Larson Live. I remember one day after my show, driving home from the station, when my heart was very heavy. I was burdened with something that I really couldn't talk about, but God knew about. I was crying out to Him for wisdom, insight, direction, something. Give me something, God, I cried. Suddenly my ears perked to the voice on my radio, and it was someone on Faith Radio talking about the very problem that I had. I work for Faith Radio, yet at that moment, I was a recipient of a divine connection of hearing the right word at the right time. That's what God does. We love Him for it. Every day, we do our best to serve up the best leaders, the best voices of our day to help disciple you in your faith. But then God does what only He can do. He steps in and helps you to hear the right word at the right time. If Faith Radio has become a part of your daily journey with God, we would love to hear your story. Share how God is using Faith Radio to encourage you and to help you grow at myfaithradio.com. Thanks so much for tuning into Susie Larson Live, talking to our good friend Dr. Troy Spurrill today. We get him on every month to talk about health and the healing process. And once again, he's not here to diagnose you over the airwaves. He's answering your questions, health and healing questions, to help maybe get a bigger, broader perspective on your approach to getting well. But if you're going to make any changes, always talk to your doctor. Aaron wrote in, because at the opening of the show, we talked about what happens in the body. Why does cancer grow sometimes? And Dr. Troy talked about lots of people, if not everybody, at some point has cancer in their body, but many times your immune system just devours it. And Aaron said, thanks so much for the conversation. I do think it's important to note, however, that you can do everything right and still get cancer. I do know people who've done everything right and they still battle cancer. And sometimes the shame can cause anxiety. 100% agree. And I meant to say that, Aaron. So I so appreciate you texting in and saying that. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to add on the caveat of there's a lot of stuff that we are figuring out. So when we talk about doing everything right, it's everything right that we know of. Right. And so as things are revealed and we get a little bit more clarity, because they used DDT for a decade before they found out it was bad for you. So there are things like that we don't know, that once we kind of clear out, it will get better and easier. But shame, yeah, it's not, he's exactly right. So, or Aaron's exactly right. I'm not sure if that's he or she, Aaron, but it's very important to know that you can be doing everything right and still get sick. That's 100% accurate. And so there shouldn't be any even frustration with that, because we don't have the full control over all of those things, and it's impossible to live perfectly here on this planet. And that's why we need Jesus.
Amen, brother. I mean, and you're sometimes exposed to toxins you have no idea about.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where we trust God, because you can't live, like you said, in a toxic-free environment. You can do a lot of things to minimize collateral damage, but we live in a toxic culture on every front.
Yep.
In media, in social media, in diet, in pesticides, all of it. So, I mean, you just ask God for wisdom. What's the best that I can do for my body to minimize that impact? But always remember, again, as someone who's battled a long time, Jesus, whenever he saw the crowds in need, he didn't roll his eyes. He didn't breathe a heavy sigh. He was always moved with compassion. Yep. And that's Troy's heart, and that's my heart as well. So, Aaron, I appreciate you saying that. I got to say this. Ann writes in and said she had high blood pressure for 25 years. She didn't take pharmaceuticals, and I'm not downing or dissing them, friends. I'm just being clear, but this is her testimony. She's been on black seed extract, magnesium glycinate, oil of oregano for 8 months, and her blood pressure is back to normal. So all that to say, each of your journeys is unique to you, but there are things you can do, and just ask God to show you, do your homework, and maybe you'll be surprised. Yep. We've got David writes in and says, what's the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic? Oh,
good question. So a probiotic is the actual bacteria. A prebiotic is what they eat. So like sometimes it's fiber or things that they can just chew on. So it's the fuel for the probiotic to eat and sustain them.
So is prebiotic most often like a fiber?
A lot of times. So fiber, because it sits for a long time, like something like they'll eat like sugar too, but it's fast acting. And so just like sugar for us, so you give sugar to a kid and it's like hyper. You give sugar to a bacteria and it gets hyper. But if you give it like a dog and a bone and it gnaws on it, it's much, much healthier for that bacteria, and they don't get all wild and crazy. Picture a bacteria on sugar. It's bouncing off the walls just like a child. And then picture a nice, calm dog chewing on a bone, and that's what we really want when it comes to the bacteria and the prebiotics. We want it to just be a slow ingestion.
So then if you want to look for the difference, you'd see that on the label, right? You'd see a prebiotic.
Yep. Yeah, they almost always label them now, probiotics with prebiotics.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't know if I have time for this question because we just have about a minute left. If someone's exposed in their environment to radiomagnetic frequencies, ultrasound frequencies that cause migraines, do you have any way that the person can discover the source of those frequencies?
Yeah, you can actually get a gauge meter, and there are professionals who will come out now looking and measuring EMFs, but a gauge meter can start to detect it, and we've seen that one. I had a very famous case 20 years ago of a gal who had migraines, and it was coming from her bed up against the wall of an old farmhouse, and the electric currents, all the wiring was on the outside of the wall, and that's what was triggering her migraines. We just moved her bed to the other side of the room, and her migraines went away.
Wow, so fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, friends, there's so many questions that came in that we haven't been able to tackle. I'm very sorry because we are out of time. But we're going to grab all of these. We're going to put them in a document, and we'll get a show scheduled, Doc, where we can get through as many as we can. Thank you for joining us today. That's where you say you're welcome. I'm glad to come anytime.
I thought it was cut off already. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
It's the best part of your day is what you were going to say.
Yes.
All right.
I had a great conversation going on in my mind there.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I wish I could have been there.
Yeah.
Friends, thank you for tuning in. I pray you found some encouragement here today. So sorry we couldn't get to all your questions. There's quite a few of them, but like I said, we'll gather them up and we'll get them answered as best we can, as soon as we can. Just remember to trust God with your health and healing process. He will lead you in the way that you should go. He'll give you that sense of peace or that little kind of sense of inner wince if something's bad for you, and he will lead you on the path of life. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll meet you back here next time. Thank you for listening to this conversation from Susie Larson Live. These conversations are available because of your support. You can become a supporter now at myfaithradio.com. Please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes, and then share it with friends so together we can all have a deeper life in Christ.